BuzzFeed UK's brutal jobs cull, where almost a third of staff were laid off after the site overreached. BuzzFeed CEO Jonah Peretti. Getty Images, Michael Kovac. Late last week, BuzzFeed CEO Jonah Peretti admitted that his company overreached in its mission to figure out the future of journalism in the UK. To an extent, he was acknowledging the obvious. BuzzFeed UK had just laid off 39 of its 140 employees when he told the Columbia Journalism Review that we invested more than we should have earlier than we should have during a tough business climate in Britain. Sources in the company speaking to Business Insider fleshed out the situation, describing a bleak process which saw almost a third of the company shown the door in a few weeks. Peretti's admission comes against a backdrop of missed revenue targets last year. BuzzFeed fell 15 to 20% short of its $350 million, £247 million, goal, and declining traffic. Comscore figures show BuzzFeed UK hovering at just over 10 million unique users towards the end of 2017, down 20% since January 2015, see chart below. BuzzFeed does, however, consider itself a multi-platform publisher, and its website traffic is not its only measure of success. Comscore. Business Insider has spoken to a number of BuzzFeed UK insiders coming to terms with the unexpected severity of the cuts after. Editor-in-Chief Janine Gibson once said, "There's a genuine sense that we might just be figuring out the future of journalism over here." The redundancies were part of a global cull of 100 jobs, and the full scale of the impact on the UK was made clear in early December. U.S. Editor-in-Chief Ben Smith originally said around 20 people would be affected in Britain, but this figure was revised up to 40 when the London newsroom was brought up to speed a week later. The Christmas party was also swiftly cancelled. Insiders were floored by the news. 39 of 140 UK staff left, 23 of whom worked in the newsroom. Business Insider compiled this list of those willing to go public with their departure. By the middle of January, there was a flurry of last day at BuzzFeed tweets, as journalists publicly said their farewells. In most cases, it was quick and clean, although not as brusque as in the US, where staff were shown the door on the same day as the cuts were announced. BuzzFeed dished out extremely generous redundancy packages, according to one source, in exchange for silence from those involved with non-disclosure agreements. This kind of arrangement is not unusual in Britain if golden goodbyes exceed statutory requirements. BuzzFeed UK Editor-in-Chief Janine Gibson. BuzzFeed targeted some obvious areas. Gone are its full-time staff in Scotland, while the website's British science desk has been shut down. A layer of what an insider called ceremonial management was also stripped out, with founding editor-in-chief and head of European growth, Luke Lewis, the highest-profile departure. The National Union of Journalists, NUJ, was on hand to assist members. There were around 44 at the company prior to the cuts, with legal advice, but said the redundancy program was brutal, and carried out without any meaningful consultation. Staff are still fighting for union recognition at BuzzFeed UK, and the case is currently with the Central Arbitration Committee, CAC, which will help define the terms of a group bargaining unit. Two of the most prominent voices in the campaign for union recognition, science editor Kelly Oakes and news journalist Francis Whitaker, were made redundant this month. They publicly disagreed with BuzzFeed's vision for union recognition, openly questioning management's characterization of the way staff are organized and rewarded. You can read a summary of their testimony here. Oakes and Whitaker declined to comment. A BuzzFeed UK spokeswoman made clear that the redundancy program was not linked to the ongoing rankle over unionization. She said, BuzzFeed UK's restructure was driven by internal business needs. The timing of the restructure was unrelated to the CAC proceedings, which have been going on for more than a year. The restructure was part of a global company change. Outside BuzzFeed's UK office. Google Street View. One insider reflected that it was weird and ridiculous to wave goodbye to so many colleagues. "I am just gutted. So many talented people, couldn't be prouder of the work we do," they said. It was a sentiment shared by others. Head of Celebrity and Entertainment Kimberly Dadds tweeted, "A lot of my very good friends and extremely talented colleagues are leaving BuzzFeed this week, which means you could be lucky enough to snap them up. Please do, you won't regret it. Kimberly Dadds, at Kimberly Dadds, January 18, 2018. A lot of my very good friends and extremely talented colleagues are leaving BuzzFeed this week, which means you could be lucky enough to snap them up. Please do, you won't regret it. And the upheaval is not yet over. BuzzFeed UK will likely have to move out of its swanky central London offices, located practically next door to Oxford Circus Station. Some insiders said the lease has become too expensive, but others pointed out that the space simply doesn't make sense with a smaller team. There is also speculation over more job cuts in the future. That should be the end of that, at least until some sort of round 2, said one source. Some remaining staff were keen to move on from the narrative of cuts. It is noticeable that the majority of its highest-profile journalists remain in place. The London investigations team, for example, was kept intact under former Sunday Times journalist Heidi Blake. Politics was also left largely untouched. The impact of its reporting has remained high in January too. Notably, BuzzFeed first reported TV news presenter Carrie Gracie's bombshell letter about the BBC's secretive and illegal pay culture, which has reinvigorated the controversy around the gender pay gap at the British broadcaster. BuzzFeed's Jim Watterson and Emily Ashton during the website's EU referendum debate last year. Getty. And if evidence were needed that BuzzFeed is now a firm part of the British media Illuminati, then it came only this week. Senior political correspondent Emily Ashton was elected chair of the Parliamentary Lobby, a prestigious position, which means she poses and fields daily press questions to Prime Minister Theresa May's spokesman. As political editor Jim Watterson noted, only 4 years ago, BuzzFeed was refused a lobby pass because the parliamentary authorities didn't think it was worth having us in there. And as Peretti pointed out to the Columbia Journalism Review, BuzzFeed is still a growth story. We had another year of growth in 2017, but we're always trying to grow more and faster. I would say we had a good year but not a great year, he said.